Good morning, members of committee. As we begin today's meeting, we would like to acknowledge that we are gathering here today on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and before them the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Huron, and Wendat. We also acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and other global Indigenous people that now call Brampton their home. We are honored to live, work, and enjoy this land. And welcome to our members of committee today. And I believe our next item is roll call. Is there a roll call? I believe all members are present in the chambers with the exception of Councillor Tour, Councillor Singh, and Councillor Brar, who are joining us virtually today. Our next item is approval of the agenda. Do any members wish to add a business item to today's meeting? Councillor Palleschi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I have two items to add to today's agenda. One on the cannabis store locations in the city of Brampton.
Okay.
And property standards order for 11722 Mississauga Road.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, do we know where would that be in the agenda today?
Through you, Chair Santos. So the cannabis store location item would be under corporate services, item 9.3.3, new business. And the property standards matter regarding 11722 Mississauga Road is under legislative services section, new business item 12.3.2.
Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair, Mr. Clerk, essentially it's not really a property standards order item. I think it's still under legislative services, but it's more to do with a home that's deemed historical, has no historical significance whatsoever.
So I think, Mr. Clerk, this is somewhat similar to the notice of motion.
Yes, through you, Chair Santos, which is listed under legislative services section.
Okay.
Perfect. So item 9.3.3 will be added in corporate services related to cannabis retail store locations, and then 12.3.2 added to legislative services on a property standards order. Councillor Medeiros and Councillor Fortini. Oh, Councillor Medeiros.
Yeah, my apologies. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just had a delegation from Solmar, and as the clerk reminded me, and I think the delegate understands that no decision will be made today. It's just simply we'll be delegating, we'll refer it to staff.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Fortini.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add the discussion. I know we're having some digging up from Bell from Fiber Optical in the area, Ward 7, and I'd like to have a discussion on that.
Councillor.
On the Public Works.
So this is in relation to infrastructure digging?
Yes.
On fiber optics for Bell?
Yes.
Would it, okay. So I don't know, Mr. Clerk, if that would also fit under the discussion item on the 5G network?
Through you, Chair Santos, it may. I know there is a discussion item from Councillor Santos on the agenda as well as a staff report on the 5G network, which is wireless, but is your issue wireless or wired or both?
Well, it's wireless. It's where they're digging.
Where they're digging?
My issue is the digging portion. It has nothing to do with.
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe the issue is with respect to the damage that Bell has been doing
I
within the
understand.
boulevard,
Yes.
and the steps that we're taking to get it repaired.
Okay, so that is a different matter, right, Mr. Clerk, I believe?
So through you, Chair Santos, then it will be identified under Public Works section as new business item 10.3.2.
10.3.2, thank you. And Mayor Brown, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Santos. I have a discussion item that I'm putting forward with Councillor Tour, who I believe is online, and Deputy Mayor Singh, and that is a discussion on the TD Toronto School Board's decision to ban caste classifications in the City of Toronto. And Councillor Tour, when it comes to this discussion item, can speak to it more broadly.
So through you, Chair Santos, that would be under corporate services as a discussion item, 9.3.4.
and banning of cast? Is that correct?
Classifications.
Cast classifications. Okay. Seeing no further members on the board, or I don't think there's anyone else online. Mr. Clerk, anything else further to add?
Through you, Chair Santos, to committee, no, there's nothing else from the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Paleshi to approve the amended agenda. Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Do any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. Consent motion. As part of the consent motion process, I will read each agenda item that is subject to the consent motion, and any member may verbally identify the item to be held for debate during the meeting. Any item not held for debate will be considered as part of the consent motion and voted on for approval. 8.2.1, staff report, update, altitude accelerator agreement renewal. Consent, staff report. 9.2.1, tax adjustments, cancellations, and reductions pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001. Consent. 9.2.2 is held for discussion. 9.3.1 is held for discussion. 9.3.2 held for discussion. 10.2.1, staff report, activate downtown Brampton status of year 1. Consent. 10.2.2, staff report, Peel Zero Emission Vehicle Strategy. Consent. 10.2.3, staff report, traffic bylaw, 9393 administrative update. Consent. 10.2.4, staff report, traffic-related issues, U-turn restrictions at Williams Parkway and Whitewash Way, Ward 5. Consent. 10.3.1 is held for discussion. 12.3.1, notice of motion to repeal designation bylaws 198, 2017, not 199, 2017, and 164, 166 Main Street North. Anyone wish to hold that? Consent. I missed one. 10.2.5, staff report, request to begin procurement CCTV camera services for stormwater systems. Consent. 12.4.1, correspondence from Rosemarie Grakaj, President Brampton Carp, regarding decision to not reestablish the age-friendly advisory committee. Consent. Awesome. I will now ask the clerk to summarize any of those items that were held out of consent by any members.
And through you, Chair Santos, none of the items were held, so only the items that you referenced in the new business items are the items for consideration of today's agenda, assuming the consent motion carries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. I have a motion moved by Councillor Keenan to approve the consent motion. All those in favor, anyone opposed, and that carries. Announcements. Today we have an announcement from the United Way campaign regarding an update, and we have Steve Ganesh, who is the Commissioner of Planning, Building, and Growth Management, Junaid Salim Khan, Supervisor, Energy Management, Planning, Building, and Growth Management, and Raj Chandegra, Manager, Corporate Donor Relations, United Way, Greater Toronto, Ruth Cramond, VP, Community Investment and Development, United Way, Greater Toronto. Mayor Brown is the sponsor for today's announcement. Welcome, Steve.
Good morning, everyone, and through the chair, it's my pleasure to speak to this presentation regarding the 2023 roadmap for the United Way campaign for the City of Brampton. I was the chair for the 2022 campaign, and I don't have to tell anyone in the chambers today or those listening online that you don't have to walk too far from City Hall or through our neighborhoods to really see how residents are dealing, those who are struggling are dealing, whether it's trying to find a place to sleep, a warm meal, or services to deal with things like mental health. And in last year's 22 campaign, Team Brampton stepped up in a big way. We had a target of 85,000, and I believe we well exceeded that target. And whether or not members of council, members of CLT, staff across the city were participating in our events ranging from the duck race at Wildwater Kingdom, our barbecue, beach volleyball, or participating in the longest night. Many of our staff across the organization helped United Way in a big way, and that money went to a lot of organizations across the community. I'm not going to take away the thunder from this year's campaign chair, JK. He's got a bit of a presentation, and with council's indulgence, I would ask that there be a little bit of leeway for him and his guests from United Way to extend the presentation time to 10 minutes.
Yes, for sure. Thank you.
Great. So, JK, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Ganesh, for the kind words. And next slide, please. I'm just going to talk about the some of the agenda items. We're going to talk about the overview of the campaign as it related to the 2022. What did we achieve from many of the events that we hosted? And I'm going to talk about the 2023 campaign, the high-level roadmap that we have, and also some of the key takeaways from the campaign. Next slide, please. So as Commissioner Ganesh mentioned, my name is Junaid Khan. I'm known as JK, and I'm the Supervisor of Energy Management in Public Works and Engineering. And for my day job, I work on exciting projects related to energy efficiency and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. But most importantly, why I'm here today is that I was the vice chair of the 2022 United Way campaign, and I'm the chair of the 2023 campaign. Next slide, please. Before I go into some of the highlights and some of the overview, I would like to invite Ruth Cramond, who's the VP of Community Investment and Development from United Way Greater Toronto, to share some updates with the Council. Ruth?
Thank you so very much for making a little bit of time for United Way on, I know, what is always a packed agenda here for Brampton Council. Just really, I'm here to say a special thank you to Mayor Brown for championing United Way, to all the councillors who have supported us over the years, and to the staff at the city who've done a fantastic job on this year's campaign. A special thanks, of course, to Steve and Junaid for leadership with United Way. I mean, United Way doesn't work without all the volunteers, all the donors, all the champions that we have in community. And we know also that every year, I always have to remind the agencies that we give funding to, every year we start from scratch. Every year we have to come out and ask you once again to give in spite of inflation, in spite of all the other challenges you're facing, and you so generously do, and it is overwhelming for us as staff at United Way to see what you and the community are willing to do. Steve mentioned the challenges. You all are more than aware of some of the challenges we're still facing at this point, sort of post-pandemic. And United Way, I see, works in complement to government, right? We try to get out into community, into the spots that government has trouble reaching. We can be responsive, quick. We work with agencies on the ground as issues are coming up, and as I said, to complement the work that they might be doing with government as well. So a few things at the moment. I think you know the issues, but just what we're seeing with our agency partners right now. For example, what we know is that while the restrictions have diminished, many youth are still quite disconnected. And the agencies are having to work hard to bring them back to the programming. So there's a big emphasis on outreach. We hear a lot about youth mental health, but it's not easy to reach them at this moment. As you know, they're in their rooms, on their computers, or in places that we wish they were not, and not always engaging with the agencies. So they're doing a lot of extra work right now, trying really hard to connect with youth, and often successfully. Organizations like Rapport, Big Brothers Big Sisters, trying to get out there and reconnect. But United Way is also working with a bunch of new agencies, some local grassroots agencies, a terrific organization that many of you may know, like Lady Ballers Camp, which is a group of young Black women who've started an organization. They started with summer camps, but they're actually doing, we're funding them to do an internship program for green industries, trying to get young people into green industries right now. So we're seeing some real creativity out there. Organizations like The Journey, who are still out on the ground, working with residents, and, doing after-school programs, people in the Ardglen and Arenda Court area. And then another organization that we're really interested in, I think that's tackling an issue that we know is live here in Brampton on homelessness, the Restoration, Empowerment, and Social Transition Group, trying to help young Black youth get housing and other kind of wraparound supports they need. So food insecurity is a big, big issue. Everyone's working on it. We know the Region of Peel recently also announced some funding for food security. United Way is putting lots of money out to support that, like Knights Table and other key groups here in Brampton. But we're also trying to work hard on the coordination aspect of it. We're working with Mississauga Food Bank and the food centers in Brampton to try to coordinate the efforts, because there's a lot on the ground, but it's not always coordinated. We don't want to see one senior getting 5 meals in a day and another that's not getting any food access. And we know it has to be culturally relevant food. So United Way has been working with groups on that. And then the last thing I want to mention, I'm telling you our challenges as well as our successes, because I think that's the real work, that we're still struggling to bring volunteerism up to the levels that it was pre-pandemic. And we're working with Volunteer NBC on that in Brampton and Peel. And they are getting some good success bringing people back out, but we still need Meals on Wheels volunteers. We still need people. We found a lot of seniors stopped volunteering because they were fearful and continue to be a little bit fearful. So always appreciate your efforts in spreading that word and trying to engage people in your communities. So anyway, we're proud to work with you. We are proud to work with the agencies on the ground. We can't do it without you, and we just appreciate all your efforts to create a vibrant and caring community in the United Way. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
Happy to take any questions. Okay, terrific.
Thank you, Ruth, for the updates. Next slide, please. Next slide. And next slide. Thank you. So in terms of the overview of how we raise donations, we have 3 methods. One is employee pledges. The second one is the events that are organized by the United Way core team. And the third one is events organized by all the other departments. Next slide, please. So for the first one, for employee pledges, there's an official campaign that runs from September to December, whereby members of the staff would get an email that is on the right-hand side, whereby the staff can register through United Way online portal to sign up for perpetual donations, automatic payroll deductions. Outside of this campaign window, we have a form that the staff can sign for the perpetual donations. Staff can also choose to make additional donations via the United Way portal while the campaign is active. Next slide, please. The second one, which is the biggest one, is the events organized by the United Way core team. So as Commissioner Ganesh mentioned, we have exciting events such as the duck race, all-staff barbecue, beach volleyball, and there's a lot of hard work that goes into these events, and the members of the core team as well as the ambassadors are here. They run the show in the background to ensure that these events are organized properly and that they are successful. Next slide, please. In terms of the events organized by other departments, one example that I want to give is the enforcement and bylaw team. Last year they held a softball game and another very fun event called the Taco Fest. As part of this event, an initiative is carried out called the Taping a Boss, and all the proceeds that are collected as part of this initiative are donated towards our campaign. Next slide, please. That being said, in terms of the 2022 campaign, our goal was to raise $85,000. We managed to raise $94,000, off of which about $33,500 were from events and $60,500 from pledges. Some of the major events were all-staff barbecue, duck race, Great Wolf Lodge, silent auction, and the longest night. Next slide, please. So in terms of the 2023 high-level roadmap, we started with the Curling Funspiel. The beginning of the campaign raised about $1,400 from it. And some of the other events that are in the pipeline is the National Public Works Week Barbecue that's coming up in May, all-staff barbecue, duck race, silent auction, and Great Wolf Lodge, and also considering bingo. Through you, Madam Chair, can I have 2 additional minutes? Thank you. Next slide, please. So for the 2023 campaign, we are, based on the high-level roadmap that we have, we are anticipating to raise about $34,000 from events and around $63,000 from pledges, and that gives us a target of $97,000. I do want to mention, as Ruth mentioned, that because of the current economic conditions with high costs of living and inflation, there's a little bit of a challenge in terms of all of us are facing challenges. So we will try our best in terms of meeting this target, but we do also want to acknowledge the staff that despite all these economic challenges, they're providing their support. Next slide, please. So the key takeaways is that due to the unwavering support from the staff, members of council, leadership, United Way core team, sponsors, ambassadors, 2022 campaign was a huge success. With steadfast support from everyone, we will ensure that 2023 campaign is a success as well. And members of council are invited to participate in the events and are welcome to share ideas for fundraising for the campaign. One item I would also like to mention, a few weeks ago, thanks to our sports and tourism team, we were given tickets for the IIHF tournament, for which we held a silent auction, and through that we also raised $1,550 for the campaign. Next slide, please. So that's all from my side, and if there's any questions.
Thank you very much, JK, and all of the staff and the entire core team for the United Way campaign, for everything you do. It's all volunteer, and so thank you, because everything you do goes back into our community, and we appreciate it. Mayor Brown has some words.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the city staff that put so much effort into this, whether it's curling or duck races or United Way raffles for the hockey championship. You've really stepped up and gone above and beyond, and I love the creative ideas, different ways to raise funds for a good cause. So on behalf of my council colleagues, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, we have a check for the campaign, and I would request through you that if all of the members of council and
For sure.
take a picture with the check.
Let's do it. All right. Our next item on the agenda are public delegations. We have one added public delegation, 6.1, from Solmar, added by Councilor Medeiros. I believe are they here in person or online?
Through you, Chair Santos, they're online. Mauro Paravini from Solmar is present and in the session. Mauro, you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mauro. You have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Through the chair, good morning, Honorable Mayor and members of council. My name is Mauro Paverini and I represent Hampton Development Corp., a project by Solmar Development Corp. The reason I'm appearing before you this morning is to respectfully request that council consider a request to reduce the application fee for zoning bylaw amendment application filed for the lands on the property municipally known as 241 Queen Street East. As background, Hampton on April 13, 2023 filed a zoning bylaw amendment application for these lands to facilitate a development consisting of 4 apartment buildings with approximately 1,586 units, ground floor retail, a daycare, 4-story office building, and with an approximate density or floor space index of 4.9. The development also includes land to be dedicated to the city for 2 public roads. Hampton was subsequently advised by staff that the fee for the zoning bylaw amendment application only is approximately $644,000. And again, I want to stress this is just for the zoning bylaw amendment application, no related official plan or site plan at this point in time. As set out in my letter, the Planning Act permits the municipality to establish a tariff of fees to cover the anticipated costs of the municipalities for processing each development type. Application type. The Planning Act also permits council to reduce the fee where council is satisfied the fee is unreasonable. Hampton believes the $644,000 fee is unreasonable for the following reasons. Put simply, the city's official plan already permits the land uses proposed by this application. The $644,000 fee is required to review an amendment to the zoning bylaw to increase the residential density on the site from a overall floor space index of approximately 3.5 to 4.9. However, with respect to density, the site is identified in an urban growth center, it's on a BRT corridor, and it's in the city's current and new Brampton official plans where policies expect the greatest building mass and density to occur. The site is also designated in a major transit station area in the approved Peel Region OP, and when the province approved Peel's OP, it specifically deleted the reference to maximum densities being established by the local municipality in the MTSA. The city's official plan must conform to the region's plan within 1 year of its approval, and the city has commenced its process with respect to MTSAs. There was an item on the last Planning and Development Committee meeting regarding MTSAs. The zoning for the MTSAs must implement as-of-right zoning for transit-supported densities in the MTSA. When the as-of-right zoning permissions are established, zoning of bylaw fees will not be required for those applications that meet with the requirements of the zoning bylaw, or will significantly be reduced by the equivalent of the future as-of-right zoning permissions. The site is also located within the boundary of the proposed unlimited height and density special policy area report that was considered by council in September 26 of 2022. I recognize that this report still needs to go forward. Just as comparison, the same application filed at the City of Vaughan using current tariff of fee bylaw would result in a zoning application fee of approximately $231,000 and in Mississauga of approximately $360,000. In addition, yesterday, Vaughan Council approved unanimously a staff report respecting development service fee structure, including development fees, application fees. The report was supported by a current study undertaken by Wilson and Associates economists, where the study recommended and staff supported a maximum fee be implemented for each application type.
Mauro, you have less than 1 minute.
I'm almost done. The recommended maximum application fee was $85,000. And the reason I mentioned the Vaughan study is the concept of a maximum fee. What's driving the fee for this application is the proposed number of units that are proposed. The current Brampton fee bylaw applies $367 for each unit over 200. And that's accounting for almost 508,000 of the $644,000 fee. Both Vaughan and Markham Mississauga established maximum fees for their application, and in Mississauga's case for the residential portion of the fee. Their per unit fee over 200 is also substantially less. Therefore, I'll bring this to a conclusion. Therefore, SOMAR is requesting that council consider, given the planning context that's prevalent in this particular situation, where density is expected to occur, that council consider the reduction in the fee of $644,000 that's required essentially to increase density on the site. I understand that council will refer my request to staff for a report, but request that council direct staff to meet with Hampton again and bring forward its report to the next available council meeting, as Hampton has filed its application and the payment of the fee is required to deem the application complete. So I request there's some urgency. In conclusion, I want to thank council and staff for consideration of the request. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mauro. Councillor Maderos, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I guess before I refer it to staff, to the commissioner, is the timeline, would that work for next week's council, or would you need more time?
Through the chair, I would ask for council's indulgence for a bit more time in order for staff to do a bit of a comparison to the municipalities that the delegate spoke to. In essence, the council has approved the new development application fee bylaw in February of this year. As you heard from the delegate, this application was submitted in April of this year. Council's new fee bylaw is reflective of fees that are appropriate for Brampton to achieve full cost recovery for a number of reasons. One, to offset costs at time staff are spending on reviewing the application. And two, council will recall we brought forth a report on Bill 109 that speaks to implications for municipalities who do not meet timelines and reimbursements to the industry for not meeting those timelines. So some of the drivers for our increased fees are based on those two. Should council wish to direct staff to continue to meet with the applicant, we could be happy to do so and bring back a report. But ultimately, it would be council's decision to ask staff to deviate from the bylaw.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So Steve, in terms of I'm understanding, you would require more time than what the applicant is requesting?
If I understand correctly, the next council meeting is May 3rd. So we would request perhaps to come to the following council meeting thereafter.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I see Mayor Brown's on the board. Maybe Mayor Brown wants to add something.
Yeah, go ahead, Mayor. Are you done, Councilor
Yeah,
Maderos?
yes,
Perfect. Thank you. Mayor Brown, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I hope this report includes, I think that some of this work has already been done, just a list of municipalities and what the fees are. I know our goal is to be an easy place to invest, to build with limited red tape, and Steve, you're doing a great job in making this an investment-friendly city, but I know there's costs that have to be recuperated. We also have to protect the best interest of the taxpayer, and there's staff time that goes into these applications. So I'd love to see, and if we have it, if it's publicly available, essentially everyone we compete with in the GTA.
Through the chair, if I could address the comments from Mayor Brown. Council will recall there was direction to staff to do a comprehensive fee review. That work is being undertaken. It's scheduled to be completed later this year, but certainly for the purpose of this application, staff would be happy to bring back sort of a high-level summary of some best practices that would help to inform that later fee review and could help council's decision on the request by the delegate.
Understanding, I think we have our eyes wide open for this, that if you do it for one, you do it for everyone.
Yeah.
Through the chair, exactly that.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Councilor Maderos, back to you, and then Councilor Palashi after.
I was just going to refer to staff, but if I do a referral, does that stop Councillor Palashi from speaking?
It does, through Chair Sanchez, it does not. It's a referral debate, so Councillor Palashi will be speaking to the referral motion.
Okay, I'm happy to refer it to staff, and you had suggested not next council, the council after.
Through the chair, yeah, that would give staff a little bit more time to flesh this out.
That's fine. In the meantime, if you can meet with the applicant as well, or have conversations, communication with them.
Yeah, through the chair, we'll do that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maderos. There's a referral back to staff to come back to council May 17th. Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Steve, we don't want to get in the way of development. We don't ever want to. Time is money. But essentially, if the developer's asking for that short time frame, what they could do is they could make the payment or provide a payment in protest. And then if council essentially changes the bylaw, it'd be retroactive, and then that money would go back to whatever the offset is, correct?
Through the chair, in fact, I have spoken to the delegate with that option, and for council's benefit, staff are processing this application in the absence of any payment to start the circulation process so that we don't slow down any approvals.
Okay,
It's just under the Planning Act, we cannot deem the application complete until we receive the fees.
For sure. And so until council does make a decision, that doesn't stop anything and moves it along. Thank you. Thank you, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you, Councillor Paleshi, for that possible solution to move things along. We have a referral from Councillor Maderos that it be referred back to staff for review and report back to the May 17th meeting of council. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much, Mauro, for your delegation. Our next
thank you.
item is 7.1 Government Relations Matters, and we have Chris Ethier, CAO's office, with a presentation and an update. Thank you, Chris. Go ahead.
Thank you and good morning. Through the chair, I'll begin today's update with an overview of the Regional Council meeting agenda. Next slide, please. We begin with a couple of reports related to planning and growth. Item 13.2 is a report which provides an update on the growth management program and reports on monitoring of the Region Appeals growth forecast and development charge performance. City staff will continue to collaborate with the region and other stakeholders to coordinate the phasing of growth areas with the delivery of servicing and transportation infrastructure across the region. It is important to keep in mind the changes introduced through Bill 23, including impacts on DC and revenue collections and accelerated housing targets, require more growth-related infrastructure with a shorter timeline, creating significant financial risks. City staff remain committed to working with regional staff in supporting growth and development across Brampton and identifying a solution to meet the residential and non-residential growth forecasts in a sustainable manner. Next slide, please. Item 13.3 provides an update on growth and infrastructure planning related to Bill 23. City staff have commenced conversations related to updating population growth allocations and completing the master servicing plan. City staff are working internally to identify key strategic growth areas for focused growth based on development activity, planning principles, and will provide updates to council as required. City staff remain committed to working in partnership with the regional and provincial staff in supporting growth and development across Brampton. Next slide, please. Next, we have several agenda items related to finance. First is item 15.1, a budget policy and reserve management policy compliance update, which covers reporting requirements, the use of delegated authority to adjust the operating budget, capital budget, reserves, and reserve funds. The region's tax rate stabilization reserve is below the target range of 5 to 10% and currently sits at 4.5%. Staff would point out that the below target range reduces the region's financial flexibility and funding available to respond to unforeseen events. Next slide, please. Item 15.2, the 2022 capital performance and impact on capital reserves and reserve funds, provides the third and final update on the financial results of the 2022 capital budget. City staff point out that the region maintains a backlog of $4.1 billion as of December 31st, 2022. The 2022 spending amounted to $793.6 million. Furthermore, the region has over 5 years of capital backlog approved based on 2022 spending. The City of Brampton has between 5 to 6 years of capital backlog approved based on historical spending. The region and Brampton maintain similar capital backlogs. Next slide, please. Item 15.3, the 2022 operating financial triannual performance report, which provides the third and final update on the financial results of the 2022 operating budget and highlights the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. the region's operating budget resulted in a surplus in both tax-supported revenues and utility rate-supported revenues. The regional staff recommend that both surpluses be contributed to reserves for future capital funding. City staff observed that the tax rate stabilization reserve includes a $4.1 billion backlog. Should both surpluses be applied to the reserve, it would help bring the reserve back in line with Regional Council's target. Lastly, staff would like to flag item 8.3, the vacant home tax public consultation and program design. For background, at the January 14th, 2021 Regional Council meeting, Council approved a resolution directing regional staff to conduct a feasibility study to assess the appropriateness and applicability of potential implementation of a vacant home tax in Peel Region. A working group comprised of regional and local municipal staff was established and have discussed the feasibility of a vacant home tax. In July 2021, regional staff engaged Ernst & Young to conduct an assessment to evaluate the feasibility of implementing a vacant home tax. Ernst & Young has concluded their feasibility study, and the report was shared with the working group, and a report was presented to Regional Council on January 27, 2022. Ernst & Young has since been working on a draft program design. Working group members recently reviewed the initial draft design and provided input and concerns, but have not been privy to an updated version as of yet. The working group discussions to date have identified a number of questions and concerns relating to the implementation of a vacant home tax in Peel Region. City staff recommend that the working group continue to meet to resolve the questions identified prior to developing a program framework and communication plan as recommended in the report to Regional Council. There remains significant research required to address the concerns raised by city staff participating in the working group before an implementation plan can begin. A detailed note will be sent to Council today by the CAO. Next slide, please. Moving on to provincial updates. Peel members of provincial parliament joined the Deputy Premier and Minister of Health to announce a 38% increase to Peel's homelessness prevention program allocation compared to last year, bringing the total investment to more than $42 million. This is part of the 2023 budget commitment of an additional $202 million annually in the province's homelessness prevention program and Indigenous supportive housing program. This is a welcome announcement given Council's recent motion calling on the government to act on the growing homelessness crisis in communities across the province. Next slide, please. Staying with provincial updates, the province is currently soliciting comments to changes introduced in Bill 97, the Helping Home Buyers Protecting Tenants Act, through 12 ERO and RRO postings. The city will be commenting on 9 postings with 3 different commenting deadlines. Staff will be bringing the first of 3 reports to Council on May 3rd. The next reports will be presented prior to the May 21st and June 5th commenting deadlines. The June 5th commenting deadline includes the proposal to integrate the current provincial policy statement and a place to grow into a new provincial planning statement. Next slide, please. This slide covers some of the key proposed changes, including the definition of an area of employment, which is proposed to be changed to an area of land designated for business and economic uses consisting of manufacturing, research and development, and warehouse uses, as well as retail, office, and facilities ancillary to a primary use. This new definition will prohibit institutional and commercial uses unless those uses are associated with a primary use. The bill also proposes refinements to the definition of development and new permissions that would allow the minister to make an order without having policy statements, provincial plans, and official plans applied to the respected order. It also proposes the fee refund provisions for processing an application to amend bylaws, approved plans, and drawings in accordance with Bill 109. Finally, it enables tenants to install air conditioning units where not provided by landlords. A report will be brought to Council for Council's endorsement of the responses before staff submit it to the province. Next slide, please. Moving on to federal updates. The Prime Minister, Premier of Ontario, and numerous ministers announced that Volkswagen is investing $7 billion to establish its first overseas electric vehicle battery manufacturing plant in St. Thomas, Ontario. This will be the largest electric vehicle-related investment in the country's history. It's also another step in Ontario becoming a major international player in the electric vehicle manufacturing ecosystem. Next slide, please. The last slide provides an update from the Ontario Big City Mayors AGM and conference that took place last week. During a roundtable with Minister Clark, the OBCM caucus asked for autonomy in how municipalities meet the 2021 housing construction targets, the 2031, housing construction targets the province has set for their cities. The mayors also raised suggestions related to municipalities potentially not being eligible for compensation for revenue losses caused by the housing legislation, such as Bill 23, unless they're able to meet provincial housing targets. OBCM passed a motion calling on the province to expedite the process to fully unlock the ability of municipalities to do their part in solving the housing crisis. The mayors also passed a resolution supporting Bill 5, the Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act, a private member's bill that would require codes of conduct for municipal councillors. The caucus called for the bill to be fast-tracked and for the province to consult with municipalities and their integrity commissioners when regulations are created. This concludes today's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We've got questions from Councillor Palleschi, followed by Councillor Medeiros. Councillor Palleschi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I'm going to ask Commissioner Ganesh if you can speak to a little bit about the that new urban area phasing strategy. You know, it wasn't just a few weeks ago where Mayor Brown was asking for information related to infrastructure and how the city of Brampton is kind of losing some of the infrastructure that we had thought that was in our, 2021, 2031, 2051 growth plans. And I'm a little bit caught off guard to see that this phasing strategy that the region is implementing is so geared towards Caledon's growth, given what's happening in the province today and the possibility of the removal of planning altogether at the region. So if you can maybe just shed a little bit of light on that.
Sure. Through the chair, great question, Councillor Palleschi. I'll attempt to answer this question from a couple angles. The first, as council may know, despite what Bill 23 has suggested about removing current regional planning controls, we have not received the regulations from the province on that as yet to the details. So to date, the current rules of engagement for regional planning controls are still in place. The Region of Peel has ultimate control over boundary expansion when it relates to the town of Caledon. And I believe the report before you tomorrow at Regional Council will speak to their work plan to that. To your second point about commentary from Mayor Brown around the need for Brampton to ensure that we have adequate servicing to support not only 2031 growth, but certainly what we're seeing is an escalation in densities through, for example, the last delegation, the Solmar application. The report that will be before you tomorrow at Regional Council will speak to the region's work plan to update their master plans for servicing in Brampton. I think what is important to note for Council is that staff continue to work with the region, and I have had conversations with regional staff asking that the region look at opportunities to fast-track elements of their work plan on key corridors in Brampton, i.e. Queen Street and Steele, so that we do not have to wait for the completion of their water wastewater master plan in order to address some of those applications and those folks that we have knocking at our door. So I'm hoping to work with regional staff through this process to see how we can do that, and certainly through forums like this, we'll report back to council on that progress.
So, and thank you, Commissioner. It's clear to us now that because of the lack of servicing in some of the applications that were coming forward over the last little while, our servicing was taken by the municipality to the south, and water flows downhill. So what I want to ensure is that with this new strategy in Brampton's in providing the right service for the growth of Brampton. No longer is it taken from any other municipality, but additionally, it's not taken from anywhere else within the city of Brampton. So, you know, Councillor Barr and I have a lot of money sitting in the ground in the west end of Brampton. We have Heritage Heights, which is, there's nothing like it in Ontario, because we've looked. We don't want any of that service to be taken to feed. We're going to rob Paul, pay Peter? Rob Peter, pay Paul?
If I could, through the chair, in terms of being able to proactively work with the region in terms of addressing our servicing needs, staff are doing a number of things. So every week, staff send the region updates on applications that are received across the city by ward application type. That information is then, sort of vetted by regional staff, so they have a heads up as to the number of applications. And it's our hope that that information is then fed into regional staff who sort of charge with water, wastewater master planning. To your latter point about looking at other areas across the city to offset servicing deficiencies, I'll have to work with regional staff to get a better handle on sort of their allocation process and methodology before I can say with confidence to council as to what the implications would be. But certainly through the report that you have before you and the work plan that the region's going to entertain, we can bring forward reports on that.
Okay, thanks, Steve. My other question through you, Madam Chair, is in relation to Bill 5, the Code of Conduct. It was last term of council, we actually were requesting some stronger wording in other levels of government to hold all politicians accountable for when it comes to workplace harassment and violence. So we had kind of tried to set some kind of direction around that mirroring or bringing forward together both the workplace harassment policy in the city of Brampton and relating it to the council code of conduct. Is that essentially what this potentially could do? I think we're ahead of the game in terms of trying to get it all sorted out, but where are we in terms of this direction? And it's a private member's bill?
Yes.
So does that mean it's going nowhere?
Through you, Chair. There actually seems to be a little bit of consensus amongst a number of parties on this bill, specifically at Queen's Park, so I wouldn't deem it as going nowhere yet. OBCM did take the position, so Bill 5 would significantly strengthen individual council's ability to deal with workplace safety matters, including, I think, currently being proposed would be a process that could remove a councillor or a member of council that was deemed to have violated those terms. And so OBCM took the, essentially asked that currently the bill is proposed only be enacted on municipalities, where OBCM said we fully support that. At the same time, we would like you to expand that to include members of provincial parliament as well, and have those same standards enforced on the legislature as well.
What's OBCM?
Ontario Big City Mayors, sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Paleski. Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you through you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure if you would have this, and I don't want to put Mayor Brown on the spot, but with the roundtable with Minister Clark, was there any feedback regarding when the facilitator, the process of regional review, was there any discussion around that, or do we have any more information, or is it still, we're still waiting?
He didn't bring that up to the broader mayor's table.
Oh, he did it?
No.
Yeah,
No.
not at OBCM.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Medeiros, and thank you, Chris. Motion from Councillor Paleski to receive the presentation. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries. Thanks so much, Chris. Our next item is economic development. I believe everything was added into consent in this section, and so we're at councillor question period. Do any members have any questions related to economic development? Seeing none. Next item is public question period. Do any members in the gallery or online have any questions? Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Chair Santos, there are no questions online.
Thank you very much. that concludes economic development. We're now into corporate services, and I will be chairing this section as Councillor Singh and Brar are online today. I do believe everything was added into consent with the exception of the downtown 5G pilot status update from staff, which is 9.2.2. And so this is an item that I had added. Oh, no, this is also the discussion item, right, Mr. Clerk? I can deal with both together. And so this is an item that I had added a while ago, and thank you very much for Rick and team for providing an updated report on what the status is for this pilot project. I do just have a couple of questions, and the first one is how are we enabling more competition for the servicing of 5G throughout the city and or the downtown core?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think what needs to happen is that we need to get back to the table with more dialogue with the telecommunication providers. As the report had indicated when we first went out to gauge interest in telecommunication providers providing 5G to the downtown core, we only had one response, and that response was from Bell. So that's who we've been working with over the past year and a half, almost 2 years now. And we have reached a bit of a hurdle with the connection of their services and with Electra. And to that end, we've drafted a letter for the mayor to request that Electra open up dialogue to find creative solutions to that. But speaking directly to your question on increasing competition, we are also taking steps to engage other telecommunication providers through possible development opportunities that are coming to the downtown core. And as I understand it from some discussion today, that Rogers may have infrastructure in place already. And so we need to contact Rogers and verify if that is the case. So more dialogue has to happen between now and the summer months to understand what is out there and available. And we will certainly do our best to promote moving this project forward. It may be, if you can bear with me through a bit of a rant, I know we framed this as a pilot program, and I think maybe we can start to look at it more as an incubator program, in that we know that 5G connectivity is necessary to promote the reopening of our downtown businesses and economic prosperity and the branding, of Brampton's innovation hub and innovation district. And so really, I think rather than considering this as a pilot that may or may not move forward, I think we should start to consider this as an incubator project where we are opening up 5G in the quickest way possible to our downtown core and to pave a way to move forward for the rest of the city.
Okay, thank you very much, Rick. And so does the motion or the direction cover and in the report exactly what you've described in terms of engaging in more conversation and possibly looking to now incubate this instead of creating a pilot program? Or do you need further direction on that matter?
I think I feel that we've drafted the motion in generalities enough that would allow us to approach other telecommunication providers. But I'm happy to take specific amendments through you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And so then my last question on this is in regards to the infrastructure that's being already pulled up out of the ground in downtown Brampton, and some of our small businesses and businesses in the core facing some barriers to access the 5G network. So for example, one small business reached out to me saying that Bell is telling them that they need to spend $20,000 in order to access the 5G network. And they seem to believe that it's slightly unfair because as soon as they do that, then guess who else gets to benefit from that $20,000 investment? So I guess my next question is as you're negotiating and going back to Bell and Rogers and or other telecommunications providers, can we find out how we can support our businesses within our existing infrastructure to better access the 5G network. I say this because many of the businesses are having trouble getting enough internet speed to even do transactions, that now people always use Interac or debit or what have you in order to pay for their transactions. No one pays cash anymore. And in fact, in the downtown core, we're encouraging people not to accept cash and to instead use, Interac or debit. So is there any direction in here that we can provide to advocate for our businesses and increase incentives for telecommunications companies to give businesses access to 5G? And this is also goes to a competitive advantage and encourage more business investment for other businesses across the entire city.
To you, Madam Chair, if you'll allow us to report back after a bit of investigation to verify those costs.
Okay.
I think it would be appropriate that we approach the companies and substantiate what those costs are and why they would be so high. And then we can come back with options to mitigate those costs once we understand what they're associated with.
Okay, great. So I think we need to amend the motion accordingly to say that as number 5, that staff also report back on communication with telecommunication service companies and what servicing I don't know how to word this right now.
Yeah, possibly to, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, possibly to report back on mitigating costs to provide 5G connectivity to the businesses within the downtown core.
Yeah.
And we can provide options and real costs associated with that, and then council can make an informed decision.
That would be great. Thank you very much. And then I think I will also request, if we can, just get a progress report on this. And I think, Rick, if it's okay, we recommend sometime in the summer, if that's enough time. June or July.
We would love to come back with an update, yes.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. So we have any further comments? Mayor Brown.
I'm glad you brought this forward, Councillor Santos. In a modern economy, this IT infrastructure is just as important as physical infrastructure. When I'm with Claire and Denise and the ECDEV team, we're speaking to businesses. This is one of the components, and there needs to be a Brampton advantage.
Yeah.
And that advantage is we need to have reliable, fast, rapid internet services. This is how you compete in the world. And if we're marketing an innovation district, we have to have the best service. And I know there's a competition right now to be some of the first movers in this space. Given the fact that we have such a large Rogers campus, all these great relationships, I think we need to be persistent and determined to make sure that we get this adapted very quickly. I know there's some municipalities in BC that are already ahead of us on this. I want us to be one of the first, if not the first, in Ontario. And so I think having a regular update, maybe even just a note to council once a month to know where the progress is. We sort of set this goalpost in the previous council, but I don't think we've been as dogged on it as we need to be. I was at the meeting that Councillor Santos organized with Rick and your team, and I'm excited there's a focus on it right now, but maybe just a monthly email letting us know if there's any barriers, because amongst the team of us, there's a barrier, maybe one of us can find a way to tear down that barrier. So thank you for adding this to the agenda, and happy to second it as well.
Thank you so much, Mayor Brown. So motion moved by Mayor Brown and myself, Councillor Santos. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Our next item on the agenda in corporate services is 9.3.1 regarding the Garba in downtown Brampton, or a Garba in downtown Brampton and Chinguacousy Park. This was added by Mayor Brown. Mayor Brown, go ahead.
So I'll speak to this. I just wanted to note that this being moved by Councillor Singh and myself, although Councillor Singh is representing me at a mayor's conference right now, so he is on the plane to that conference for the next hour, so he can't speak to it. We did this, we organized the Garba before COVID, and then with COVID, it stopped. Now other municipalities are taking up the Brampton idea, and I met with Megan from our events team with the group that organizes this, and they're saying we need to get the city of Brampton back on track for having this like we did in 2019. So I'd like to add it to the corporate events calendar, and right now they're looking at 3 different locations: Chinguacousy Park, the downtown, or maybe a location in the East End. But I would just say we can finalize the location with the organization and events team afterwards.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Any comments from staff? No? Okay. So we have a motion moved by Mayor Brown and Deputy Mayor Singh. All those in favor? Oh, okay, moved by Mayor Brown. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much, Mayor Brown. I am looking forward to the GARBA this year with Councillor Dennis Keenan. Okay, item 9.3.2 we've dealt with regarding a discussion item for the 5G pilot program and update. Next item is 9.3.3, an item added by Councillor Pelletier regarding cannabis retail store locations. Councillor Pelletier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, you'll know that, and members of council, after several weeks of public consultation, Brampton made the decision to allow cannabis retail in the municipality. We thought at that time there was some discussion about how, it wasn't going to be a huge thing. There wasn't going to be tons of stores. And as the applications started pouring in, then we said to each other, well, it'll work itself out because they can't all survive in this climate, and yet more applications continue to come through. Now the city of Mississauga has allowed cannabis stores in their municipality, and I don't think we sit here today saying, well, that will level itself out. I think what we need is provincial help on this. We need more authority and control when it comes to these retail stores opening up in the municipality. They're getting awfully close to parks, rec centers, private schools. I know that staff are doing their best in terms of trying to keep them as far away as possible from these locations. But then we look at where these schools, where the kids leave lunch during lunch period, and then kind of, all go in a group to the local plaza that is 100 and maybe 51 meters away from the school. Then there is in these fancy, they're using fancy signs, big signs, lights, all kinds of stuff to draw your attention to these cannabis stores. Not to mention, the province has removed the funding that they were providing us, which was, I think, a huge incentive, because that funding was going to go to Peel Regional Police and ourselves to try and work with kids and crime, and try and help and support the best we could. So I do have a motion that basically is requesting that the mayor send correspondence to the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario advocating for additional provisions when licensing legal cannabis stores to expand the 150-meter requirement from schools and private schools to also include parks, public facilities, places of worship, and group homes, and that this correspondence be sent out to all of our MPPs. And then we also request that the mayor have kind of conversation about the funding or the lack thereof, to see if we can get some of that funding back to set the programs that PRP and others had set in place to continue to be able to fund those programs. So if it's on the board there, if members would like it read, then please read it. Other than that, it's before you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Councillor Pelletier. I think the motion is pretty straightforward as an advocacy motion to the province, and happy to support this. I'll just add that Mississauga, because they didn't actually opt into retail cannabis, we're having a flurry of issues related to illegal cannabis retail store locations, which is the reason why they're now opting in, is because there are too many illegal ones that they're dealing with. And so with the market opening south of the border, hopefully we'll see a slowdown of some of those licensing here, but I am so happy to see this advocacy going forward. Motion from Councillor Pelletier and Councillor Tour. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries. 3.4, and this was an added item from Mayor Brown and Councillor Tour regarding the Toronto District School Board, TD motion, TD.
Through you, Chair Santos, it's on banning of caste classifications.
Getting rid of the caste classifications. Mayor Brown, are you online? Councillor Tour?
I'm sorry, I was trying to raise my hand, but I wasn't able to do that.
That's okay.
I'd like to speak to this. Thank you, Mayor Brown, for adding this on, this as a discussion item onto today's agenda. I just want to bring to attention that recently, earlier this year, south of the border, the city council in Seattle became the first city to outlaw or add caste discrimination to the city's anti-discrimination policies. And following that, a couple of months ago, at the Toronto District School Board, there was a motion that was tabled and ultimately voted on in favor for the Ontario Human Rights Commission to look at anti-caste discrimination and come up with policy related to that that would add it to the anti-discrimination policy. I just want to ask staff if, I know we recently had discussions about our anti-discrimination policies here at the City of Brampton, and to see that, would it be a good time now for the City of Brampton to look into adding anti-caste discrimination to our policies regarding discrimination at workplace and at the city.
Thank you, Councillor Tour. Mayor Brown.
Well, I think Councillor Tour had a question, wasn't? Is that a question, Councillor Tour?
That was a question to staff, correct?
Apologies, Councillor Tour. Back to staff.
Through you, Madam Chair. Councillor Tour, I believe the city's anti-discrimination policies were being written in a way that were to be generalized as much as possible to accommodate anti-discrimination against any race, gender, or ethnicity in all generalizations. So I don't believe a final draft has been presented yet, but I will go back with the team to look at what that will look like, and perhaps we can have further discussion with council on whether we want to highlight specific items or speak in generalities so as not to exclude by accident anyone from that policy.
Thank you. Councillor Tour, any further questions?
No questions at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor Brown, back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Santos. So I got a message from Deputy Mayor Singh, who is very passionate about this. His flight lands at 12 noon, and he would just like to speak to it as well. So procedurally, I'm wondering, I looked to the clerk, if we could have this as the last item on the agenda before we officially pass it. I know it's probably, everyone will just support it. It's not contentious to say that everyone should be treated equally. We want equality of opportunity in Canada, regardless of your economic position. But because Councillor Singh has worked on this for years, I think it'd be appropriate to give him a chance to speak to it if the meeting is not adjourned before 12. Could we have Council's indulgence for that?
For sure, we can stand this down until Councillor Singh is able to participate in the discussion as well.
Unless there's any other council that wants to speak to it now.
The only thing that I would add is that to Councillor Torr's point and to Rick's point about our policies, et cetera, the gender-based analysis plus motion that we passed a couple of months ago includes not just gender-based analysis, but also other different forms of discrimination or barriers that exist in policies or systemic discrimination within an organization. And so using that particular framework may also aid in dealing with this particular issue. That being said, we will stand this down until Councillor Singh is available to participate. So moving on, we have Councillor question period. Do any members have any questions related to this section of the agenda? Seeing none. Next item is public question period. Mr. Clerk, should we wait until till Councillor Singh comes back on to finish off that discussion, or can we ask if there are questions now?
Through you, Chair Santos, we can proceed, and I can advise there are no questions in the clerk's inbox.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next item is Public Works, and the chair is Councillor Vicente. Oh,
Yep.
Councillor Keenan's going to do it.
Councillor Keenan, Councillor Keenan, thank you.
Switch. Yeah, no.
Thank you, Councillor Santos. So we are now in the Public Works. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that everything was put into consent that was on the agenda, 10.1, 10.22, 10.23, 10.24, and 10.25 were all put into consent?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
So that would bring us to 10.3.1. Discussion item at the request of Regional Councillor Santos and myself, an update on traffic calming measures. You go first.
Thank you, Councillor Keenan. And so we are now starting to receive complaints from residents now that the snow has melted, not just about noise, but also about speeding in our local neighborhoods. And we've been on this particular file now for a while. And in speaking with Vice Chair Keenan of Public Works, we wanted to bring this item forward, essentially just to get an update from staff in terms of what the timelines are to start implementing some of these traffic calming measures. And I have, for example, a list of prioritized streets, and just wondering whether or not staff, because I know Councillor Vicente would have sent prioritized streets where we have speeding issues to start implementing some of the traffic calming measures, but in particular the flexi signs. So I know speed bumps are going to take a lot longer, but flexi signs in particular, and I have a list of them here, which I'm hoping staff have received, where we've either already installed them in the previous season or have been asking for them to be installed for this season. So question about flexi signs and a progress update from staff in terms of timelines. And I know Councillor Keenan has been working very hard on finding solutions for speed bumps and speed humps across the city. But just wondering how soon can we start slowing these cars down so that we can get more complaints about the fact that cars are moving too slow.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the question through the chair to Councillor Santos. Yes, the in-road flexible traffic calming signs, we actually just met about them yesterday.
Yay!
We have a long list of where they were last year, and we are starting to re-implement them on all those streets, including some additional ones that we've identified.
Thank you, Kevin. I know that there are other traffic calming measures, and so it's not just about a flexi sign or a speed bump here and there. It's a combination of the different traffic calming measures. Wondering if you can share and describe some of what those combinations are. And a good example is on Vauden Street and Center Street, where we've been very successful at calming traffic down because of the layering of measures that we've taken on those streets.
Sure. Through the chair to Councillor Santos, yes, we have our neighborhood traffic management guide, and that outlines all the tools we have in our toolbox. And like you said, the pavement markings on Vaughan Street alone, we reduced Vaughan Street from a 4-lane road to a 2-lane road with the bike lanes. And that is, some people don't realize, but that's a very effective way to get traffic into a single file lane and to reduce speeds and also to discourage cut-through traffic. Now, we also have the additional funds through the budget process, the additional $1.4 million. We are coming to Committee of Council on May 10th with a report to begin procurement, because we do need to go out to hire a contractor, and we do plan to start aggressively implementing these speed cushions now.
Thank you, Kevin. And so as we implement a lot of these traffic calming measures in order to achieve Vision Zero, and quite honestly, this is about protecting the vulnerable users of our roads and shifting the culture a little bit away from prioritizing cars and actually prioritizing safety. And so while cars are starting to slow down, we are prioritizing safety. And so what I'm finding now is I'm getting complaints about cars moving too slow.
Through the chair, yes, we also get the same complaints, but you're exactly correct. Council adopted the Vision Zero framework, and the Vision framework says that safety should be prioritized over anything, including convenience. So unfortunately, yes, in some cases during peak traffic periods in the AM and PM, there will be some delays to motorists, but overall the roads will be safer.
And thank you for that. And so I just have a couple of roads where, and I'm just wondering, have you received our prioritized roads for wards 1 and 5?
Through the chair, yes, we do have our neighborhood traffic management guide priority list, which now with COVID over and everything and with traffic patterns normalized, we are updating them with updated data, speed data, and cut-through traffic data. But we do have a preliminary list that we can provide to all the councillors for their wards.
Awesome. So I have my list here, and a little bit of an updated list, because residents are doing a really good job now of like sharing with us either through 311 or through reports with the police or through emailing our offices what's going on in their neighborhood. So we're not mind readers on council. We actually want to hear from the public where the issues are so that we can prioritize these streets accordingly. And I think that's the strategy in terms of moving forward. In particular, I want to bring up a couple of streets. Elburn-Merkel I think needs a serious road diet and speed humps and flexi signs, because it looks like an airport runway. And there are specific blind spots just south of Jean Augustine High School where the road kind of bends into an S. And so it would be great if we look at Elburn-Merkel in particular. And the other roads, I'll give you the list. I won't go through one on one. But a timeline and progress reports on how things are going with implementation would be greatly appreciated.
Through the chair, sure, no problem.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Councillor Santos. We have Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was going to ask the same question. Are we going to get the list? Because I know we have a lot of complaints and we like to compare them. And, like I know that road, Greenmount, trying to push for that 3-way stop instead of 1-way and put some speed bumps. The other thing, you're talking about cushions or bumps? What do you mean? Are they the same, or
through the
cushions
chair,
are the rubber ones?
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion at council, and everyone refers to them as bumps, humps, or cushions. They're all different. The bumps are more something suitable for a parking lot. They actually make vehicles come down to almost a standstill, so they would not be appropriate on our roadways, because they would create a situation where vehicles are rear-ending each other or would cause damage to the vehicle. Now, the humps are similar to what we have out there now, but except they expand across the whole roadway, and they don't allow the gaps that the speed cushions have that allow the fire trucks and buses to get by without having to slow down.
Yeah, but when you're talking about, no, I get that portion, which I think the fire truck could go by if you believe because axle to axle is different from the car. But when you're talking about the cushions, are they the ones that you both put them on and you take them out? We're not putting those on, are we?
Through the chair, so we have the temporary speed cushions, which are the rubber ones.
Yeah.
We use them in conjunction with Peel Regional Police where they identify street racing, or we use them for temporary conditions where there's a construction project. For example, we are about to implement some in the southwest quadrant of the downtown Elizabeth Street, Mill Street, because of the construction in the downtown, which is encouraging cut-through traffic through that area.
But we're putting like the speed bumps, those are not gonna be there, like on these roads of the list. We're putting the full asphalt ones.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, great, thank you. We'll wait for the list.
Thank you, Councillor Fortini. And just to speak to you, Kevin, first of all, thank you. We send you a number of emails about traffic, whether it's lights or traffic calming measures, and always a quick response, and always very easy to work with you and your team to get things accomplished. So thank you for that. So Councillor Santos really hit a lot of the points. Obviously, we've been having a lot of discussions around this, so I don't want to speak about some of the items that she already has. What I do want to talk about is the type, which is also some of Councillor Fortini's points, is the type of speed bumps, cushions that we're using. I've had a lot of conversations with the Commissioner, Dr. Fire Chief, around how we can implement so that it doesn't impact on response times, and how we can put certain speed humps or cushions, because I don't think one speed cushion or speed bump in particular, when I talk about it, I mean a physical type, is what we need as a city. I think we need to be a little bit more flexible to make sure that roads that are, you know, larger and wider in size are getting the appropriate speed calming measures. So I definitely want to make sure that we're looking at multiple options, which is similar to the ones that you currently have on Vauden, which are the smaller, I'm going to call them speed cushions because they have the brake, if I am correct. And in consultation with the fire chief, I believe that the speed humps, which are the larger ones, which are more effective on larger roadways, or larger arterial roadways are needed. And we've kind of discussed some type of speed hump that does have the brake in the middle for the fire department to go over, which I would love to be offline and share with you and your team. But I want to make sure, so I do know we're going out for an RFP for contractors to implement across the city. I want to just make sure that we have the different types, the two types that we will be using, and then when we go to implement them, they're in consultation with the fire department to make sure that we're getting the appropriate ones, to make sure that we're not impeding on response times for emergencies for our residents. So those are some of the main items that I wanted to discuss. And you said you're going, when are we going out for the RFP?
Through the chair, we are coming back to Committee of Council on May 10th to get approval to do so because it's over $1 million, and then we can proceed from there. We'll be ready to move ahead.
Okay, and I'm very confident that between myself, you, and the fire chief, we can add that extra speed hump to make sure that it's incorporated into the tender. So that's all for me. Is there any objection to doing that?
No, through the chair, we just have to look at the device that you're looking to install and make sure that it works. And we'll have to just do some probably benchmarking, stuff like that, but we can figure that out.
Yeah, and my last point is going to be on the education for the residents. So we do get tons of complaints that cars are driving too fast down the street, and then we implement a speed cushion or a speed bump, and then we get complaints that it's in front of their house. So I just want to know, are we prepared for the educational portion of where we're putting those down?
Through the chair, yes, we're going to have to work with our Stratcom team to get that information out, and we did actually have a chat with Councillor Pelarchi before about the current process through our traffic management guide, which we feel like it can be streamlined a little bit, but the communication to the residents is key. But all the public meetings and stuff that we used to do, we don't think are necessary because now people are used to traffic calming. But we'll figure out the appropriate way to get that information to the residents.
And for me, it's as simple as a map on the street and where we identify they're going to go, so we can hear those complaints instead of, because it could be something with a disability, which I've heard in the past, where it's causing issues for seniors, and that is why I just want to make sure that we're not putting them in to take them out because we didn't do our due diligence. But thank you so much again. Appreciate it. Is there any other questions? No. Okay, great. Thank you. So moving on. with 10.3.2, which was a discussion item at the request of Councillor Fortini regarding the installation of fiber optics in Ward 7. Councillor Fortini.
Mr. Chair or Vice Chair. So Monday, I spent half a day and yesterday all day with a lot of residents about this Bell digging. So we have sweepers going around the road now. They started. And they got piles of dirt sitting there for months that they dug, and they're going around. And some of these dirts are right near our catch base. When it rains, it's all going inside. That's one. Sidewalks broken. Corners were intersection because they have to dig to torpedo. There's two. And the other thing is, while I drove around, I noticed yesterday having a meeting with them, they said that we actually approved these as a city. So I wanted to really know if we do approval. But so when I get these single driveways and you have a 50-foot lot and you got this box right near the driveway, if a new resident or that resident wants to extend his driveway, he won't be able to. So when we look at these drawings, why don't we tell them to move them 6 feet over, 8 feet over? You're only torpedoing, putting the box right there, eliminates that person from extending his driveway. So if he has only a two-car parking and he wants to do a 4 and he has a 50-foot lot, he won't be able to. And then we're going to be back stuck with these cars on the road because of that box on the boulevard. So do we actually give these permits and tell them where to put these boxes? Because that's what I was told yesterday, doing the tour with them.
So through the chair to Councillor Fortini, our group with Doug Rodering actually has met with Bell on the cleanliness and the work that they've been doing. And we are upping the inspections to ensure that Bell is following the rules and keeping the streets cleaner, the work cleaner. In regards to where they actually are positioned, I'll have to look into that for you. I'm not sure who has the final decision on that, but we will look into that piece for you. But we are doing some more inspections. I know Rogers made a mess of a park in your area on the weekend, which they will be fixing this week. And that should be done by early next week. It's a bit of work that they're going to have to do.
Yeah, okay, I really want to look at it because I remember when they were doing my road and they were putting the box on my neighbors and I told them, put it on my side. It's easier. We already have a Rogers box. We got that there. And to bring the fiber optical to people's homes, that means you have to start breaking into the sidewalks to bring it to the homes. And the guy came around with notes. But then yesterday I was told that's where the city asked us to stamp the drawings. But regardless, that's it. But I really feel bad for someone buying a home and the box is right near the driveway, and now they can't extend it. You know, you're eliminating that resident. To move it 6 feet over, you're torpedoing. To put a box there and put it 6 feet on the boulevard doesn't hurt. But there's also a lot of holes in the area in the G section. Yesterday I went to a lot of places. Just holes there. They have some plywood where they don't have the plywood. Like, that's dangerous. Like, in the winter, they did fill up with gravel, I get it. But there's a lot of holes there, just empty. Even on the corner on Goldcrest there, near the school, sidewalk's missing and everything's broken. So we got to get on their back. But they have these piles of dirt all over the road. Now it rains, like this weekend. That dirt's all going in our sewers.
Agree.
Right, so let's see.
So through the chair, we will, I'll reconvene with Doug today and make sure that we're out. And,
Thank you.
We reconnect with Bell.
Okay.
Councillor Fortini, are you satisfied with, is it no direct, no, okay, great. So that brings us to question period. Is there any questions from any of the councillors here online? Nope.
There are no questions
No
from the
questions.
public, Mr. Chair.
Deal with public question period. Is there any members? There is none. So I will now pass the chair back to Councillor Santos for community service.
All right, Councillor Keenan, thank you. There are no items that were held or to be dealt with in community services, so do any members have any questions regarding community services? Seeing none, public question period. Any questions from the public? Thank you, Mr. Clerk. No questions from the public. We have now legislative services. Everything was put into consent with the exception of the added item from Councillor Pelletier 12.3.2 regarding property standards and a heritage property. Councillor Pelletier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're going to take council back a little bit to July 2021, when this reared its ugly head. At the corner, southwest corner of Mississauga Road and Mayfield, there is a barn that's really, really old, but it's falling down. And we needed that to be demolished for safety reasons, and staff were supportive of that. There's a bungalow on the property that, there's a historical, I guess, essence on this property because of the ownership of who the people were and how long they've been in Brampton and how long they farmed Brampton. So that was the historical significance of the property. If anybody was to look at the bungalow that's on there, there's no historical aspect of the bungalow. The bungalow it's a bungalow that I wouldn't say is old. I would say that it just needs to be probably torn down. There's no, nice spindles or old architecture involved in the creation of that bungalow at all. Plus, there's outbuildings that are probably a lot more recent. At that time in July 2021, I had thought that the clear direction was to demolish the house, the barn, but we wanted to keep the timbers from the barn because they had some historical value, just how old they were. And much like other timbers in the city of Brampton where, we've said, let's take these and move them to the Siemens location. And so hopefully we can try and incorporate that into either the building of Siemens, the animal shelter, not Siemens, the Brampton Environmental Education Center, the animal shelter, or something else that we can do with the timbers there. I'm sure there's lots of things that we could do. So let's bring those timbers there. So I want to keep that in terms of keeping the significance of that old barn, but I do want to clearly set the direction that we don't need a engineer to go into the house, a structural engineer to go into the house to see if it's safe. The house is literally sitting almost on our easement that the Region Appeal needs to put the road widening in. So there's no reason for us to in the future move this house, or it's going to be demolished. So I need that. I think they need that clear direction, especially with the use of this land is going to bring significant employment to Heritage Heights and to Brampton. So we need to keep moving on this. I know that there's a hearing tomorrow. The request is an adjournment from that hearing. I think if it makes the case a little bit stronger if committee today says to go ahead and demolish, allow the demolition permit through the Commissioner of Planning to oversee that and get this ball moving. But I do want to make sure that those timbers are saved. As per the July 2021 report, it states that they all needed to be checked, evaluated, and then saved. So I do want those to be moved over to Siemens at the cost of the landowner. Do you have any comments, Mr. Marsh?
Yeah. Through the chair, staff will take that as direction. I would perhaps look to the clerk to maybe capture that somehow in minutes for today, and then staff could take that back. If I understand correctly, we'll work with the landowner to ensure that the timber is relocated to the Siemens property, and then work with the new owner to expedite the demolition permit.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pelletier. And so no motion at this time?
I think there's a motion. Through you, Chair Santos, I think there should be a motion as the Commissioner set out because there is a property standards hearing scheduled for tomorrow on this property. So just to clarify then, Councillor Pelletier, is your motion that the Commissioner of Planning, Growth Management and Building be authorized to issue a permit for demolition or removal of the structures on the property at 11722 Mississauga Road? Councillor Pelletier's on the floor.
Councillor Pelletier, I
Through the
apologize.
chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Peter. The only, our Commissioner of Public Planning has the authority to issue demolition permits.
Through the chair, it would be my sort of signal to the chief building official that the demolition permit could be issued. So it would be through me.
Yeah. Then yes.
Thank you. So, Mr. Clerk? So the
Tim-
motion,
Sorry, Madam Chair, the timbers were captured in the July 2021. I think that could be just staff direction. I'm not changing that, and I think staff understand that. Is that okay, Peter?
we're keeping the wood.
Through you, Chair Santos, yes, there is a June 2021 resolution of council that spoke to salvage where possible. It also spoke to the authority for the commissioner to issue the demolition permit subject to certain conditions. But what I'm hearing today is these conditions may be up to the commissioner. There are no conditions tied to this motion that's being introduced now.
Yeah.
Through the chair, well, the one condition that we've heard from council is preservation of the timber to be relocated to the Siemens property. Certainly, I would look to work with the applicant to see if there's any other conditions that need to be made, but the direction I'm hearing from council today is solely the preservation of the timber to be relocated to the Siemens property.
At the expense of the applicant.
Yeah, at the expense of the applicant, so that could be put into the motion.
Okay.
Chief building official.
Go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, we've just been able to pull up the report from 2021, which does provide council direction to get the structural engineering. And from what we're hearing today, you're willing to bypass that requirement.
Yeah.
So maybe we can just get clarification that the direction received in 2021 is no longer needed to get the structural engineer's assessment.
On that specific?
On that specific.
The one, right? That's it. But the timbers and all that, like there's, and I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I say that we need to collect the timbers, but there's a whole process. And you know the process of the evaluation of the timbers, the kind of the organization of it and all of that. Like, I don't want a piece of wood being brought over if it has no significant value. There's still that whole concept that I can't articulate.
2021.
Okay, and so we have a motion being drafted on the screen at the moment. Just if
No longer be
staff can take a
required?
look and confirm if this is enough direction or if you require further clarity.
Through the chair, I might suggest a friendly amendment to the motion, if I could just
Go
see it on
ahead.
the screen, that the Commissioner of Planning, Building, and Growth Management be authorized to remove the conditions from the 2021 council direction, and then work with the applicant to relocate the timber to the Siemens property and expedite the demolition permit. That gives enough latitude for us to work with the applicant to move in an expeditious manner and not be stuck to wording solely for the 2021.
Okay, so we're just waiting for our friends at the clerk's office just to catch up to that amendment. So motion from Councillor Pelletier that the Commissioner of Planning be authorized to remove the conditions from HBO 20-2021 to issue a permit for the demolition of the structure of the property at 11722 Mississauga Road, and that the salvageable timber be relocated to the Siemens property at the expense of the applicant. Councillor Pelletier and team at the front, you're good with that? Yes? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? And that carries. Everything else, I believe, was added into consent in this section. Councillor question period. Do any members have any questions related to legislative services? Seeing none, public question period. Any questions from the public? Thank you, Mr. Clerk. No questions. Referred matters list, which is published quarterly. Do any members have any questions regarding the referred matters list? Okay, nothing. Public question period. Do any members of committee have any questions relating to any matter discussed today? Seeing none, we have no closed session items, and I believe we hit a record today with adjournment being at 11. Oh,
So through you, Chair Santos, so committee held down 9.3.4.
Apologies.
The discussion item on banning caste classification. I do not, I'm just going to check, do not see Deputy Mayor Singh present.
right, that's
So
right.
perhaps a consideration may be to refer this discussion item to council next week.
Mayor Brown?
This is committee, and so I'd say, why don't we just ratify it and we'll. Let Councillor Singh know he can speak to it at council.
During the minutes.
Certainly, there is
Yeah.
no motion, though, that's my understanding.
Is there a motion?
I believe Councillor Tour had a motion.
Okay, so let's just, how about we refer
There
this
is no motion.
9.3.4 to council next week? The discussion item. Can we do that?
Sure,
So a
certainly.
motion from Mayor Brown to refer 9.3.4, discussion item to council next week. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries. And now, at 11:16, we are at adjournment. Our next meeting is scheduled May 10th at 9:30 a.m. Motion from Councillor Brar to adjourn today's meeting. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries. Thank you very much to all staff and members of committee for all of your time and efforts today. Have a wonderful rest of your morning.